Great salespeople, sales leaders, and entrepreneurs, the best of them, are said to think outside the box. But the really best of them don't even know that the box exists. Justin Michael never contemplated that there was a box. Tune into this episode and hear about the importance of the amygdala, heuristics, and the law of attraction in sales, and understand where that fits in with skills like listening, curiosity, and persistence. Have a listen. Welcome to Coach2Scale, how modern leaders build coaching cultures. I'm your host, Matt Bonelli. Join me as we build a community of like-minded professionals who share the belief that effective coaching improves the performance of every team member. Our mission is to help leaders become better coaches. The Coach2Scale podcast is sponsored by Coachum, the world's first AI coaching execution platform that leverages evidence-based coaching to increase quota attainment. And with that, let's get started. A river cuts through rock, not because of its power, but because of its persistence. James N. Watkins. Today's guest is one of the most persistent professionals I've met over my decades in sales. He's a highly decorated sales professional who's operated in the trenches, setting a high bar and records at places like Salesforce, LinkedIn, Coachava, and Tune. He's a best-selling author of several books, including Tech-Powered Sales, Sales Superpowers, The Justin Michael Method, and Attraction Selling. He's co-founder, CRO, and executive coach at the Hard Skill Exchange. Justin Michael, welcome to Coach2Scale.
I'm really grateful to be here, and it's a bit personal for me because when I think of one of the best sales training experiences I ever had, I was working with you at a mobile tech company, and we got together up in northern Idaho. So it's sort of a this is your life moment to be on the show and really respect your work. So I'm excited for this podcast.
Awesome. I remember those days very vividly, pre-COVID. Up in northern Idaho, beautiful place. At the time, I had never been to Idaho, and it was just it was just a great experience. Is when you do what I do and you go on the road, it was just a really cool place to be welcomed into, and it was a memorable session. I remember you sitting basically in the front row, taking notes, asking questions the entire time. So, the feeling is mutual. So. Justin, we'll get right into it. You've really been a student of this business for a long time, and you're one of those folks who I really remember just taking everything that you've learned everywhere, what you've read, what you've heard, what you've observed, and then you tried it, and you put what you learned into practice, and that puts you in that rarefied air, that top couple of percent of people who go through trainings, who read books, and then really immediately apply what they've learned. But you've also run across a bunch of myths, people saying, oh, this is how you do it. This is going to work. This is the way to do it. This is not the way to do it, whatever it might be. What's a myth in the profession of sales that we both live and breathe in that you believe is misguided or maybe even complete bullshit?
Yeah, well, I mean, one we keep seeing, this year on LinkedIn is the death of the channels. Like the phone is dead because they passed some legislation that you can't robocall or you can't use the AI caller, or the email is dead now because Google created a restriction. And that's why I kind of love Todd Capone, who was my boot camp trainer back at Salesforce 12 years ago, because he's a sales historian. Should have him on, and he'll show, articles that declare the death of a channel back in 1920 or 1950, and in 1993, right? They passed canned spams, regulate the email, they did the do not call list. And the truth is that none of the channels are dead. And working with dozens of teams, I just still see the phone being such a vibrant channel. And I remember, I think he's the SVP, maybe he's the CRO now of this company, Synchrony. He was number 10 at Marketo. He's a C-level, and he says, if anyone even calls me, I just take the meeting. He's like, I get 3 calls a month. No one calls me. So
3 calls a month. 3 calls a month, you said, right?
Yeah, something really low.
My one of my Sandler colleagues, John Rosso, inspired me to do this survey, And I asked 20, it was a short survey, right? I called 20 sales executives I know, VPs of sales or CROs, company founders, right? 20 of them. And I asked each one of them this question: how many relevant, non-automated, outbound prospecting calls did you get in the past week? And, the answers were a little bit different the way people said it, but it was all slightly the same. Not sure. Maybe about one. Maybe about one. So if I had to say the most common answer, which was 80+%, it was about one. Justin, when I ask people in the training, like the one that you were in with me years ago, hey, how many prospecting calls do you think that your target executive gets on a weekly basis? Guess how many they say, roughly?
They think it's hundreds, right? Or they think
a lot.
There's the myth.
Yeah, there's the myth. Why do you think it persists?
Yeah, it's like one of these things like that PBS chain letter to fund the PBS that the public broadcasting system is shutting down, or crocodiles in sewers, or, all these things. I think just like the fitness business that sells, sugary drinks to lose weight, like you can have a smoothie and lose weight, right? We talked about this. People don't want a cold call, and they really like this narrative that it's dying. So anything that's going to support, like, I don't have to call now and get rejected all day, they just grab onto, like, yes. And so the big one that dovetails into this myth is like, well, selling has changed, but the human brain and mind, it's identical to 1910. And, if you believe in science, and if you don't, I mean, hopefully we can start there, but like, it'll probably be the same in 3010, so it's because the evolution takes millions of years, or at least the frontal cortex took hundreds of thousands of years. So if we have the same brain, and it's also the myth of attention spans. Well, these generations have low attention spans. No, they're just not disciplined to use their brain to turn off the devices and enjoy, sitting down with Hemingway or something. So I'm not dissing these generations, because I work with them, and amazingly they have the same powerful mind, and they have great concentration abilities, and they just have to rediscover quality selling.
So, simple versus easy, right? Simple to say, but as you found in your practice coaching folks and getting feedback on the books that you've written, it's not easy for people to implement. And because discipline might be freedom, but it's also hard, right? It's also hard. So, Justin, how's your approach to sales been influenced by your personal experiences, and what key lessons can others share from that journey of yours?
Yeah, so I mean, I took a lot just having some great conversations with you, but also I was on the road, and I would find, a CRO or a GM, and I would split commissions, and I would do a lot of like buddy jumps just for skydiving. And so I can name some: Garrett McDonald, Jim Angelo, Jim Taney. There were some, now C-level executives that were mentors to me, because I found this, like, when I learned to ski at Mammoth Mountain, I started on the green slopes, got to the blue slopes by like the first day. Then getting to Black Diamond was just so scary. It's so damn steep. You look down, you're like, Sonny Bono, I can't do this, right? So I finally got a skiing pro, and then he took me up to the cornice after a few trips. I went to the very top of Mammoth Mountain, straight down, and I looked down, I'm like, I'm going to die. I just was not ready for that. And so I tell people, I'm like, you can read the books, you can do the courses, but like, let's take the skiing analogy. We're going to take you with a helicopter to the top of Mammoth Mountain, California, dump you on the backside into powder. It's unlikely you'll live. So the reason I compared it to sales, and sales isn't maybe, Chris Voss and hostage negotiation. It's not life or death. However, it's an unnatural act. And if you just wing it and act naturally, you're going into your programming as a child trying to get candy from your dad and mom, like the transactional analysis. So you'll lose. It's like get in the ring with Mike Tyson and wing it. It's not going to work. So if you want to be an elite seller, you have to reprogram your mentality, your behaviors, and the method to basically get to that black diamond mogul skiing state where you've done a lot of repetition, you've retrained your body and mind. It's just so much to it. So like one of the things that bothers me is when you do the cold call, it's like, hey Matt, how you been? I just find this opener to be like so disingenuous, because you're like, I don't know you. like a manipulative tactic, you know? So my books are all about pattern interrupts and things that may be a little wonky for you to learn, but once you do, you cut like a hot knife because the brain on the other side, right? So everyone's getting emails that are black and white, and I'll send a Venn diagram. I'll send a visual to an executive, and you know, they don't get that. Or I'll call up an executive and I'll do like a Jedi mind trick opening, which I'll say their full name and ask them if they're in charge of the thing, which I call routing. I'm trying to get a referral in the top script. And it's so weird for them because the calls they did get were, did I catch you at a bad time? Can I get 27 seconds of your time? It's a cold call. Can I roll the dice? Right. And so there's a lot of behaviors that sellers make that have a low status frame and they don't speak like the prospect. They call a C-level, it was in a C-level modality, and they treat it like, you know, do you want still or sparkling? And they lower their status, thinking that's going to ingratiate them to the Lord. You know, it doesn't work. And that one comes out of Sandler as well. But, you know, applying that to the top funnel is critical.
Yeah. And I think what you've talked about in your books, which we'll make sure that we include in the show notes. And I've made my way through 1.5 of them so far. I'm going to get through all of them. Thanks for putting them on audiobook, by the way, super helpful.
Great.
So, and what you just said, we could go down a dirt road on because, you know, some of the things that you're saying, hey, I like to make this approach or that approach. These approaches are old or they don't work. Well, if you try different things, which you have, different things can work for different people but it's all for the same reason. What you're talking about is, you know, the human brain hasn't changed in a long time. And what we're talking about is rooted in psychology. How important is understanding not just what to do, Justin, but why you do it?
Yeah. So understanding the human mind, reading Robert Cialdini and Influence, Science and Persuasion, and reading Daniel Kahneman, like Thinking Fast and Slow, and looking up, you know, Richard Bandler and emotional intelligence and neurolinguistic programming, just digging into these and trying to understand them now. It's like, I watched how you do the Sandler system, and it's like, really, like, how does Matt Benelli do this so flawlessly? You can't, it's like plastic surgery where you can't see the lines because it's more of like who you're being and the mindset. So if psychologically you doubt yourself or you're in your own head, that comes across in your tonality. It comes across in the way you think and then what you do. And so if people are in the doingness of like, what's the script? What's the tactic? It's like, and I'm looking at like, you're stammering, you're not really confident it's a solution can help them. You're second guessing yourself. Like, it doesn't matter what play you make here because, right, that's 80-20 rule, like 80% is the body language and 80% of the call is tone, and they're feeling on a deep level of millions of years of evolution, they're reading you at a gut level, like something's off here. So, right, you got to understand the psychology of the buyer and yourself, and you just got to get really clear that sales is the transference of belief, right? People buy emotionally and rationalize with logic and reason. And don't get me started, this is the other big problem with cold calls. I do a lot of top funnel. I'm going to call you, Matt, and interrupt you. And your brain's going to go, stranger, even you're a calm guy. And here's what I do. I'm going to give you beautiful logic and just, you know, pitch you and smother you from the top. Like, it doesn't work. There's got to be a listening loop. There's got to be an empathy. Like, I have to strive to seek to understand you so I can tailor how I pitch you. And that's what's so broken on the traditional cold calls. There's no time to like build any real rapport, which is seller talking, seller is losing.
Right. And a lot of that, right, is that the prospects have a fantastic response system for all this stuff, right?
Perfect response. So the prospect's perfect system is, as long as I never answer an email, they'll go away. And as long as and now the new one I call quiet ghosting, like quiet quitting, they're like, sure, we'll meet on Tuesday. And then they leave you for dead. And then send information is the kiss of death. They're always like, send information. And so people say, well, what kind of information do you want? And I think it's a more fundamental miss is that you didn't intrigue them. You have to create the desire.
They don't want anything.
They're not interested in anything at all. Yeah. So we could riff on this, but selling hasn't changed. And that's why we have to train modern sellers and new generations to carry the torch, full cycle, strategic, complex selling. And people are like, well, Justin, what do you follow? And I'm like, definitely Matt Vanelli and Sandler and Holden. There's so many good ones. Jeff Tull. I mean, it just goes forever. Lots of books from the 90s that you think are not relevant. Those are relevant. Dust them off.
Well, I think what you're talking about is you're putting work in. You're a student of the business, and look, you're making it your own. It's not like there's a one size fits all. Whether it's not Sandler, Make It Fit, that's the only one that exists, or Challenger, or Gap, whatever it is. You're talking about becoming well read, becoming informed, trying things, and making and work using what works for you. So while one of your books might be called The Justin Michael Method, what I know about you, Justin, is you don't expect your followers, you don't expect your clients to do, I'm going to use the Justin Michael method. I've heard you say it's about them personalizing it for themselves. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, because the whole idea of Elon Musk and deconstructing down to first principles, he goes out, he's like, I'm going to build space rockets. So like, great, get on this government list, and in 7 years you'll get approved. And he's like, how do you build a rocket? He's like, where can I get some molybdenum and like beryllium? And he starts going and thinking like, okay, what are the base materials? I'll just build my own rockets. And now NASA's buying rockets from him. The government's buying satellites from him. So think about this in terms of sales. Go out, read the canon, read the best stuff you can find. Right? Miller, Hyman, Spin, Challenger, Sandler, everything you can get your hands on. Apply, right? Get up on the green slope, start skiing, start trying the moves, get on the snowboard, fall a lot, fail a lot, and then build an amalgam, a steel alloy that's stronger than one piece of steel because you add in another element to it. And that element is yourself selling authentically. So what I've learned training hundreds and hundreds of sellers, and you've trained thousands, right? Is that when they tap into their authentic self, transposed over these methodologies, that's the power, because now they're selling to their own strength. And you get that in sports, right? Somebody's left-footed and playing soccer, but then they can pass because they're like have a left dimension, or you just see it like every player has a different God-given talent in sports. So in sales, like, that book, Introvert Sell. So instead of trying to create those cookie cutter reps that follow the process and the method perfectly, it's like, how can we figure out how this person can use their God-given gift as the highest leverage point to be an A player seller,
Yeah, and that's personalization, right? That requires personalized coaching, not the peanut butter coaching that says, "Hey, everybody, do it the way I do it."
Yeah,
right? I'm the boss,
exactly.
I'm the manager, right? Do it the way I do it. And look, and those people are out there, but there's also a lot of folks out there, the vast majority, Justin, that sit through a training. And when you were at the training where we were together up in Idaho, there were a bunch of people who were sitting right next to you and behind you and in front of you, who it was like a vacation day for them. Like, it might have been interesting, maybe it wasn't, but it might have been interesting. But for whatever reason, they didn't listen, they didn't apply it, right? And like, oftentimes, and what's frustrating in my line of work is when we go through something and then the next session we say, oh, so let's start off with when you put this into practice, right? Because when we worked together, it was like one of those 2 or 3 days, boom, 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 drinking from the fire hose. What we learned from COVID is that we can space this training out, and instead of 2 days of drinking from the fire hose, 8 weeks, hour and a half a week for 8 weeks, and you cover the same material, and you have a week in between sessions to practice the strategies and weeks that you learned. So we'll start off each with, hey, so what did you put into practice that we talked about last time? And invariably, it's not everybody. Why do you think that? What can we do to fix that?
Wow, that's like a billion-dollar question. I love the concept of reinforcement, and I think in all the greatest training and enablement systems, that's there. That's just like rehearsal in the arts, or we play like we practice. I think that people learn in different ways, and sometimes the approach to the coaching or training taps like maybe the middle of the bell curve or various styles. Like, some people don't, for various reasons, aren't readers. They're more auditory or kinesthetic, or they need to do it. So it's also the fact of the management to say like, hey, this is mandatory. Turn off your phones. Like, be involved in this. Keep your screen on Zoom, because the leaders set the culture. So when the managers are taking it really seriously and they're like, hey, we're gonna have a one-on-one about this methodology next week. Because I've had one, like I had a manager come out to New York and say, hey, you're great. Here's a Miller Hyman book, and like just toss the paperback. We're gonna do it, like I'll read it, and then a couple of weeks later, like we didn't talk about the book anymore. So the follow through and the management buy-in is the first place I would look. What do you think?
I think you're 100% right. And look, that's really the evolution of our business, from our revenue performance group, our consulting firm, into Coachum, right? Our whole mission at Coachum is to help managers who have a tough damn job, right? To
Mm-hmm.
help frontline sales managers, to help sales leaders be better coaches,
Mm-hmm.
and like, and personalize it in a way that says, okay, if I'm sitting down in this one-on-one with Justin versus, Mo, Larry, and Curly, I'm going to work with each person differently. I can leverage the information and the systems that are in place, whether it's CRM or conversational intelligence, calendar, email, pluck all that data and say, Justin does really well here. Nice job. But, you're struggling over here to do more deals, do bigger deals, do faster deals, to have loyal customers. Here's the likely reason why you might be struggling. And here are some recommendations to coach you specifically, in terms of turning that around and leveling up. And so at the end of the day, it's what's important to the leader is going to be what's important to everyone else. So if it's the flavor of the month, here, read this book this month, and then no one ever talks about it, and then it's the second month, read this book. At the end of the day, it's like, why am I going to bother doing it? Why am I going to
Exactly.
bother? So, when you talk about, like, let's focus on, I think it is your most recent book, Attraction Selling. Can you explain the concept of attraction selling and how
Yeah.
that differs from traditional selling techniques?
Yeah, definitely. So, I used to work. I'll quote again Jim Angelo. He was like, former Oracle BDA systems. We were on the road a lot at multiple companies. He depended on me a lot to bring in a lot of deals. We did big deals together and we traveled. It was just awesome experience. He's amazing, and in many ways, combo prospecting is based on him, sort of the boxer. But he used to say this thing about 7-figure deals, and he would say, um, visualize the goal, germinate the seed, and plan for success. And it's really like a metaphysical idea. He'd say, this is the deal I want to do. What's your biggest enterprise deal the company's ever done? Like, I'm going to do it bigger. What's the best target? And he's just like Babe Ruth, right? He's pointing at the stands. He's planning out that vision and the success. And that was an interesting tip off. So a lot of this stuff got really in vogue in the mid 2000s, the secret and the law of attraction. I got to meet the lady that wrote that, who's really lovely. And what I took it to mean is, inside the word attraction is the word action. And if we're in sales, we must take massive action. So we can get really positive. Like Zig Ziglar said, our attitude determines our altitude. And then the other big thing is service orientation, service-based prospecting, service-based selling, go-giver type stuff. So this book is like a jazz fusion of positive mindset and metaphysics with putting it into a sales process, putting it into a methodology. And the people I work with, they don't love prospecting. Like whoever said, like, I really hope my kid becomes a salesperson and prospects all day, right? So, but if that's your life and you feel grateful to a higher power or whatever you believe that this is my life, you have to find a way to enjoy the craft of sales. And so this was me for literally 20 years going, how do I do this? How do I sell this product I don't really like, or deal with this work situation and find a way to be self-actualized and enjoy today, right? Like I'm banging the phone, I'm digging a trench. How do I whistle while I work? And this is the medicine of where to go in your mind. And those are some clues.
So I love it. So basically what you're saying is, right, for the typical salesperson that's sitting there who's, I got to make these calls. Like, I like parts of my job, but I don't like all of it. But if I don't master all of it, I'm not going to be as successful as I want to be. I'm not
Mhm.
going to achieve those personal goals. So how do I figure out how to enjoy it? Right. And, even David Sandler said, decades and decades ago, you don't have to love prospecting. You just need to do it. Right? There's a lot of things in life that we don't need to like, but we need to do. I remember grinding out school, like, high school. My mother would be like, listen, you don't have to love it. It's a means to an end.
True.
What do you want to do? You don't need to love it. You just need to go, and you need to get through it, and you need to do well enough. And then, you need, like, what do you want to do? Well, if you want to do this, you need to graduate high school. You need to do well enough to get into that college that you said you wanted to go to. And if you want to do it, like, this is what it is. Like, if that's your path, you got to figure out what you like to do. And then all of a sudden, I think, what I love about what you're saying is, if you figure out a way to whistle while you work and enjoy it, then it's not work anymore. Warren Buffett said, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Right.
Yep.
And, I love that quote. And look, I've said it a bunch of times, like, I love what I do. Do I love it all the time? Oh,
no.
But generally I love what I do. And I don't feel like I'm working when I'm in the flow, I'm in the groove. So I love that concept that you're talking about with attraction selling. And it takes work to figure it out. It takes work to figure out what you enjoy about it or how you can enjoy about it, because it requires that action. That's part of that word, attraction. But it's a lot easier to bitch about it sometimes.
It's true. Like, our thoughts become things, and our mentality influences the world. So Warren Buffett also said that the best investment you can make is in yourself, and there was this trainer named Barry Ryan who did curiosity selling, and he got equity in major companies, like worked at sales. Really. And his whole thesis is you just got to be more curious. But, if you love helping people and solving problems and making their business transform to a far better state, then clue into that conceptually and enjoy that versus trying to, hit your meeting quota, your pipeline, your numbers, or win the ladder or go to Aruba. And if you really think spiritually, whatever you believe, like, we're all on this planet as one human family, and our goal is to help each other. And the way out of suffering is service, is helping. So, often helping gets a bad rap in sales. I mean, you don't want to be subservient. You don't want to turn this into a charity mission. You have to have a strong confidence and frame to lead. But at the end of the day, what's going to, ameliorate your suffering is cluing into the person on the other side of the receiving end. So you make a call and someone's awful to you, and you have compassion, you move to the next, but then you run into a good human, a cool executive who does need it. And like, start focusing on the good experiences you have. And that's the whole baseball analogy. I mean, we have the weirdest job. Like, it's not just 3 in 10, like a 300 average, and you're good at the game. Like, sometimes 1 in 100, it can be thankless. You're dialing all day, and you get one executive assistant who's having a miserable day and just kicks the cat. And you're like, why am I doing this? So I think it was from David Tailor, is you don't want to take your self-worth from the job. I loved that. So meaning, like, I got to a point.
Identity versus role.
Exactly. I got to a point where I could just get beat up all day and come home and be like, yeah, I had a good day. I was like, how'd it go? I was like, I got rejected 100 times. It's awesome. Like, I didn't care. I was like, man of steel, because it, like, the water off a duck's back, because I just knew if I kept getting those no's, I'd get a yes. And this generation can feel so risk averse that they're not even getting the no's. They're sitting on social media. I don't want to generalize, because there's some great young cold callers and things, but you look at their pipeline or pre-pipeline, and you're like, well, what's the status of these accounts? Like, I don't know if it fits. Like, no one answers the phone. No one answers the emails. I'm like, I'm the honey badger. Like, if you leave 50 voicemails, they'll respond. Turn it up. They're there, get the no, because then, like, the 12th one of those, they go, fine, I'll take the meeting, the persistence.
Well, the persistence. And that's why, I'm not sure if you picked up on it, but that's why I started off with the quote.
Right.
That a river cuts through rock, not because of its power, but because of its persistence. I always start these podcasts off with the quote that I believe is related to the guest that's coming on. And I remember on a podcast that Coldalytics or something, a podcast that you were recently on, where you mentioned something like, I'm the ocean wave, and the ocean wave always finds its target. Nothing's getting in the way. The ocean always wins. Justin, as someone whose a place got crushed by a wave by Hurricane Ian almost 2 years ago, I can tell you the water always wins.
Water always wins.
And so, like that whole thing about the being persistent. And, it might take, one call to get to somebody, but, I think you wrote in one of your books, one person maybe set the record. They were bragging that they called somebody 400 times. They
Yeah.
left 400 voicemails, something like that.
It might have been Jeb Blount in Fanatical Prospecting, and we might have mentioned that in combo. But like Bruce Lee said, be like water, formless, shapeless. It put it in a cup, it fills the cup, right? So there's also the metaphor of, are you the palm tree in the hurricane that's flexible and bends, or you the pine tree and you snap. So the most powerful form in nature, it can be water. And so, you have to have a quality approach, but there has to be enough volume. And so we live in the era of unlimited personalization. You can get in your own head and be a perfectionist. You can sit there and I want to contact Matt. So I read like every page on Google and every webinar he's ever done. And I've reached him for 5 hours, researched 5 hours. And now I craft the email. And then you know what? He doesn't even see it. If you send 100 emails, 20% open rate, you need even 100 just to get 20 read. So like, what is this mentality? So there has to be some volume, but it's got to be done in a quality way. And it's also just like the attitude. Like I was called the honey badger, the machine, um, because I was just willing to go to the max to get them to react. Like that Craig Cleveland would say the must react system, but I use that for prospecting. I watched bill collectors. My buddy Patrick, he owed a credit card debt, I think of like $15,000 or something, which is a lot of money back in the day. And this guy would call every day. He's like, Joe Maricelli, every single day. And I thought it was recording because it's not perfect. One day I just answered his phone. I'm like, here's the deal, Joe. We're never going to, like, I work for this guy. He's never paying you. But what if we pay you 2,000 a day? And the guy's like, okay, sure. And we paid 2,000 and settled the debt. Because I guess no one answers those calls. But this guy, Joe, every single day. So like, I never got a restraining order doing this stuff, but I remember there's two CROs in Cannes in the south of France. And there was competitive companies and one was trying to hire me away. So what do you think of this Justin Michael guy? And the guy laughs. He's an opera singer, and turned into CEO. And he goes, "Oh, that guy's a professional stalker," and in a good way. That's what he said. So I'm not making light of that, but what I mean is that the minute I get a do not call or take me off the list, I take them off the list. I'm respectful. However, all the research states that it takes 4 no's to bring a human to close the sale. So the first no is just protection. It's a brush off. The second no is probably they're testing you, right? So it doesn't mean you should be manipulative and forceful. You should definitely really read the room, but you're not going to be able to be an ultra high performer in this craft unless you can push through the inherent rejection that prospects have, especially ones that have the money in the P&L. If they have budgets to spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, they're getting bombarded. So I call it like the salty CXO. Like, okay, when I coach the rep, like, what did they do? They're on the call and they give me every objection, but what did they also do? They were on the call for 5 minutes. Well, what are they saying with their actions? They're obviously interested because they're sitting on the phone with you for 5 minutes. So think about what they do and not what they say, and try to just push through that resistance,
Great advice. Great advice. Something that you also is incorporated into that book about attraction selling. You talked a little bit about the role of music and sleep in enhancing sales performance. What does that mean?
Well, that's a little bit out there, right? So I was actually coaching a rep in sales who had been through a traumatic brain injury in a car accident. And what you find is there's certain frequencies like 432 hertz, 432 HZ, or 528 HZ. Put this into YouTube or Spotify, and it tends to calm the brain down. Us sellers, we drink a lot of coffee. And while I was writing that experiment, got off coffee. It's really interesting. And I'm not judging for that, because what happens is once you're off of it before bed, you get into this relaxed state and you can start to dream. So the brain runs on a beta wavelength, a certain hertz frequency. And when you slow down the wave, it goes into alpha and then to a theta state. So then you think about Quentin Tarantino. He writes scripts floating in a pool, calming his brain down. You think about Edison. He had a metal ball. He would take a nap. The ball would hit. He'd wake up. Then you look at Salvador Dali. He would nap on a metal plate with a key, drop the key. What is he doing? You're going from conscious alertness into the subconscious mind. So what I'm thinking is, like, as you start to believe in yourself and quiet these negative thoughts and start building more positive mindsets or visualizing the deal getting done, think of an Olympic athlete visualizing the race, or an F1 driver running the turns. right? How many of you on the call are sitting and visualizing the outcome you want, the check, the deal getting signed, the prospect saying yes, the technology working, the pilot turning in, and it comes from the mindset, like in the Nike Olympic stuff, you know? So that's where getting into meditation and relaxing the mind can be enhanced with music, and it can be enhanced by kind of programming before sleep or in states between waking and sleep. It's out there, I admit.
Hey, and listen, how do you, this is a slight edge business. You don't win or lose by a lot, you win or lose by a little. So anything that you can figure out, it might be out there, but I think the most successful people are the ones who figure out how to find meaning in the different concepts that are around us and learn from everybody, including some poor person who's got a traumatic brain injury, right? You help them. How can we apply that to doing what we're doing, right? Again, going back to David Tailor, just as an example, he's like, he was selling cookies, right? Like cookies and crackers. Like, hey, how do I take what I just learned and apply it to that? It all came down to psychology, which, is psychology's out there. What's a practical step? I mean, there's a whole bunch of places you can go with this, Justin. But if you think about our audience, it's sales leadership. It's people who are in sales. What's a practical step that someone can take from one of your books, like what I'll umbrella call the Justin Michael method? Not that one book, but like, everything you do. What's a practical step that salespeople can take to implement what you're doing into their daily routines, or what a manager or leader can take and coach their people on?
Great question. So note that I was a VP and I was an RVP, and I ran regions in New York and in San Francisco, and I had AEs and SDRs and CSMs and SEs reporting to me. And so the big thing is competitive strategy, military strategy. So you inspecting your team's communications. And a lot of times sales managers will look at the pitch deck, they'll look at the battle cards, the differentiators, the product marketing, but a lot of times they haven't actually looked at the emails that are being written or listened to the phone messages that are being left, or maybe there's none left at all. They'll listen to the discovery call or the first call through Gong, but taking an interest. Now, you're not micromanaging here, but you're creating a certain standard, because that's the tip of the spear and that's the tone. And so the biggest risk is when you have generic comms happening at the very top of your funnel, all the emails and the communications sound just like your competitors. And if you're selling like a CRM, you don't want the HubSpot email to be switched out with Salesforce and it's identical, right? You have to start building a voice and a brand and an approach of pattern interrupts that are differentiated in all the communication. And that's how you break through, because opening is the new closing. So when I was doing one-on-ones as a manager, I would say, well, let's look at your sequences and show me the messages, if you're open on LinkedIn, that you're getting back, and give me an example of your voicemail. And I'm really honing in on the top of funnel now, because the way you sell, like Jeb Blunt said, people buy you. Like the CEB, that the Gartner, all the statistics come about that if there's two equally, commoditized or equal vendors, it's the experience with the salesperson. So improving the level of business communication, differentiating it and standing out. And then as managers inspecting that. And then the big thing is they're using a bunch of tech stacks. You got to go look under the hood. Are they sending C-levels 27 emails? Are they spamming everyone? Are they burning out the market? And so that's sometimes a gap I see. Like that's left to like, demand gen looked at that, or marketing writes those, or we just let the reps do what they want. But look, like you go to $1,000 restaurant, you go to Le Cirque in New York or something, you come in and there's just somebody who's like, I don't know, wine list, I don't know what's here. Where do you sit? Right? You'd be just like, and we do this in our sales orgs. We put people who are maybe the least trained, the dullest end of the spear. And it's not an ageist thing. You can train, young recruits, people right out of college, to be really savvy, to know how to hit all the marks for that. But invest there. That would be a blind spot.
Fantastic. Right. Inspect what you expect. You're not being a micromanager. You're helping people get better. And when you're helping everyone get better, you're helping the team and the company get better. What do you say if you're inspecting and you say something about like, hey, let's listen to the recordings. I want to hear the voicemails you left. And the rep says, Justin, I don't even bother leaving voicemails. Nobody calls me back anyway. I don't leave voicemails. I'm just going to call again. What do you say to that, bro?
This is where I tell stories from the 80s because my mother bought a Kirby vacuum cleaner that could pick up a bowling ball and clean like oil off the carpet, which is demonstrated. So like we'd get this knock on the door all the time. She finally opens up. She buys the vacuum. She bought the knives. We had the Jehovah's Witness coming. I mean, but they all had a good strategy. And I think there's this Claude author that's still, I won't remember his last name. It's like a vacuum. You wanna learn how to sell, study like door to door.
Mm-hmm.
So like if I'm calling Matt every day and I don't leave the voicemail, he just sees the number. He sees the 917. He goes, solicitor, he blocks me. So like you should leave a flyer, leave your calling card. So what I talked about in combo prospecting is I would call, leave a voicemail, and then send an email. And in the voicemail, say, hey, I'm going to email you. And the email, I'd say, per my voicemail. And I create the loop, which I call triple. And call it the triple threat, I think by Jet Blunt. I even saw it in CB and things, but I call it the triple. It could be a quad. And, leave 4 or 5 voicemails. I got people, they leave 2. And they say, you were leaving a lot? Yeah, leaving a lot. And you leaving 4 or 5? No, can't do it. It's like against my moral code, right? They turn it up to 4 or 5 and they win. And then on LinkedIn, people send 1 or 2 messages. They say, great to connect. They pitch slap and then they bump it. But all the studies are, it takes 5 to 12 touches. So I'm not saying to automate this and mass spam. Thoughtful touches that educate and enable, and every touch. And here's a case study, and here's something out of Wiper, and add value every time and get those touches in. That's going to put you into the 1%. Nobody's doing that. There's no technology for that. It's a decision for you to be, elite and world class in your follow up, right? So yeah, it's a contrarian opinion. And people push back on that one a lot.
Yeah, and people push back on a lot of things, and but the answer, managers that I work with, leaders that I work with that are really good, they'll say, hey, that's great. This sounds like it's not something you're comfortable with. What are you doing instead? And how's that working out? Right? Because, if you're down here and you want to be here, but it's against your moral code, maybe you're in the wrong business.
Yep.
Unless you want to try something new. Try whatever you want, but you got to try something. And,
Tony Hughes had an article like the silent sales floor is killing business. And I love this concept because, you want to email all day, that's great, but you're going to need to send thousands and the limit's 50 a day. You want to sit on social media all day on LinkedIn, that's great. But, are you producing the meetings? Are we getting the pipeline? And so I call all of that marketing. Last time I checked, selling is human to human. So direct messages, like when we caught up on LinkedIn, that's human to human. We're in real time. You're sending me a chat. It's an intimate channel. We're talking. That could be better than a voicemail. But you got to get this thing called complete. So I have this North Star metric in the books called a complete, and maybe it's ancient. I don't know. I heard Ryan Reiser say it once over Connect and Sell. And a complete is like I talk to a human. So I go into sales teams and I go to their AEs and I'm like, how many completes did you have last week? How many humans did you actually talk to live? And they're under 5. So all we have to do to wildly increase the pipeline is turn that to 10. Just double the complete. I'll give you the DMs because they're basically sitting there moving the mid funnel and the down funnel, sending reminder emails, relying on the SDRs to prospect. And like 2 weeks go by and they haven't talked to anyone net new. It happens.
Yeah. And you can't deal with that for long. I mean, that'll kill you. Humans can only take so much. You either have to change the course, or get out, because you can't be in the fetal position for 10, 15, 20 years. It's not a fun place to be. Drive you to drink. So, Justin, you wrote a bunch of successful book. You're a best-selling author. You have your company. Like, what are you most passionate about doing these days? And, where can people learn more about you and what you do?
Yeah. So I've really started moving into the realm of business performance coaching and life coaching and mind coaching as an element of sales training. And that's because I believe coaching it means encouragement and it's seeing the gold in the human. So I love the journey of the transformation of this person, realizing what they have, seeing them step into their power and get the skills and abilities and then get the new results. And it's sort of the caterpillar into the butterfly or any kind of transformation and being a part of that. And Tony, my mentor, Tony, you said, if you believe in a human and they know that, that's the most powerful thing. It's like, it's funny. So sales is the transference of belief from the seller to the prospective customer. But mentorship is when someone who can do it says, hey, you've got what it takes, kid. And I've had those moments, and that's why it's extremely gratifying, like even getting trained by you and you indicating that maybe there's something special about me. So if you believe in someone, that's what I like to do. I like to mentor people and give them that spark that there's hope. You can catch me on Amazon under Justin Michael. You can catch me on LinkedIn. I've got a whole bunch of different books, and look, I'm actually going to print 1, 2, and 3, so you can just see the numbers and read to make it easier for you.
Excellent. Yeah, look, you've said it one way, and another way of saying it is coaching and leadership is getting people to accomplish more than they thought they could accomplish themselves
I love
by
it.
themselves. And oftentimes, like, there's that child in us. I might butcher the story a little bit, but it's about these two kids, and they're out on the ice, and one of the kids falls through the ice. And the other little kid, 10 years old, looks down. He's like, I'm not going to be able to pull this kid out. And he's in the middle of the ice up in Minnesota. And he looks at the shore, and there's a big tree, and he runs over to the tree, and he breaks the branch down, and he comes back, and he puts the big branch into the ice, and his little buddy grabs it, and he pulls him out. And the paramedics show up, and they're looking around, and there's this freaking monster branch there, and this little kid they're like, how did you do that? How did you know? How did you pick that big tree and come over here and save your buddy? And the old man neighbor that came out, he's like, I'll tell you exactly how he did it. Nobody told him he couldn't. and I think human nature, and over time, there's people saying, don't do it like that, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. Oftentimes people say, oh, why did you do it? You were super successful. Oh, I didn't know I couldn't do it. And the opposite mentality, which isn't as effective, is, hey, how come you don't do this or that to attract people to your event? Oh, I can do that. I didn't know I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the polar opposite. So, really some powerful stuff there. Let me hit you with a couple of quick fire questions as we close out here. This is a little bit more reflective. Who's somebody that had a positive influence on your life? I mean, this whole podcast is about coaching and developing people and bringing in guests who care about that. Usually people who are good at it had it modeled for them. And I know there's been a lot of those folks in your life, but who's one shout out that you give to somebody whose coaching and impacts had a positive impact on what you do today?
Definitely my mentor, Tony J. Hughes, because he took me on when I was, 31 at Salesforce and worked with me for 10 years and really taught me the art of enterprise sales. And it felt like the Mandalorian. And then all the folks on the road, like, Garrett McDonald and Jim Taney and Jim Angelo, and they're all CROs, literally. They're very accomplished C-levels now running business line. And and I would say Jack Canfield, right? Just gives the kid the secret in his books. 26-year-old kid, just like sometimes you run into a powerful, for Tony Robbins, it was Jim Rohn. And for Jack Canfield, it was W. Clement Stone. So yeah, I got lucky to have a few powerful people kind of help me, like angels in the wings,
So true. And we get there on the shoulders of giants, right? And the shoulders of others. So Justin, who's your favorite coach? And when I say coach, like, think about what the audience, like most people would know this person. It doesn't have to be a sports figure, but in terms of, if I just say, who's your favorite coach? Famous, fiction or nonfiction, how would you respond?
Damn, like I want to say you for sales because I've interfaced with a lot. I might
Please say somebody else.
Okay, I would say maybe John McMahon in the Qualified CRO is really he's beloved because he's real world and he's been in the trenches. That book did really well. My favorite coach, I mean, I read such a wide array of people. Yeah.
No.
It's a tough, if it's a tough question, I look back at some of these authors like, Jeff Toll from New Power Based. Oh, Jeff Toll was Mastering the Complex Sale and Jim Holden was New Power Based Selling. I've actually had a chance to interface with Mike Bosworth, who's a living legend who was part of the spin analyses. He wrote a foreword to one of my books called Reinventing Virtual Events, which I wrote with my co-founder, Julia Nimchinsky. And he has stayed in touch with us and been on our events. And he's been somewhat of a living legend mentor that we bounce things off of. So yeah, Charles H. Green is another one from the Trusted Advisor. I reach out to all these people to this day and bother them. And Bob Berg has been cool too. Like I just like, hey, you're a legend. Tom Hopkins. I go find them even if they're retired. And so yeah, everyone should do that, by the way. Don't be an ageist. There are secrets in the 90s and the 80s and the 50s. Todd Capone. Go find old books. Go find people that were, a coach or trainer from another era and figure out how to apply that now, and you'll have an edge.
Awesome. Justin, is there one question that I should have asked you that I didn't?
Oh, no. I mean, maybe my motivation. I don't know, like what gets me up in the morning. I think it's the same as you.
What does drive you?
I love what I do. I'm an artist at the end of the day. I actually feel that I'm a business artist, and this can be that debate of like, is sales an art or a science, right? But to me, like the books I'm writing are in some case like, business poetry. So I'm a part of an aficionado, a historian, an artist, and it's the craft that you can live your life. Like my buddy Garrett, he'd always say, world-class execution, world-class product. I'd write a giant proposal email and I'd spend hours on the damn thing, and it's long and it's got all the attachments. I'd send it to him first and he'd take the time to redline it and fix the grammar and go in there. This is my manager, like colleague, because he cared. Like Steve Jobs signed his name inside the computer. So it's like, the artistry of life and the craft of sales and elevating the profession. It's the second oldest profession.
Very true. I think that's a really, really good place to end it. Justin, thanks so much for being on here today. Really, really appreciate it. And we covered a lot of ground, and we talked about, pushing through the no. We talked about, sales as an art of science. It was, the importance of mindset, how the brain hasn't changed. We talked about learning to ski. You got to start somewhere. And then the importance of being your authentic self, right? And as really the only sustainable system, the only sustainable method is the one that keeps you authentic, but also the importance of persistence. So a lot of stuff there. We'll include the books in the show notes. And again, thanks, man.
It's been a blast. Let's be in touch. I can't wait to promote this to my community on WhatsApp. I have thousands of people. I will hand send this one to every single person I know. And let's just keep this going. Thanks for all your time, man. Thanks for the thoughtful way you put it together.
All right. And thanks, Justin. And thanks to everybody who's out there watching and listening. Thanks for doing that. Please let us know that you're out there. Hit the like button. Tell us what you liked about this episode specifically. Tell us if there's something else that you want to see or hear more of. We want to bring content and topics and guests to you that are not only informative, where you can take quick actions off of what they say, but they're also interesting. And I feel confident that we delivered that today, but you'll be the judge. Thanks, everybody. And until next time, coach them if you want to keep them. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Coach2Scale, How Modern Leaders Build Coaching Cultures. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at coachem.io. That's COACHEM.io. And follow us on Twitter at CoachemNow. See you all next week. Thanks for joining. And remember, coach them if you want to keep them.